The words slipped out before anyone could stop them. "Gloria, my sweet girl, why are you sitting so far? Come here to Mom." Evelyn's frail voice sliced through the clatter of silverware and forced laughter at the Thanksgiving table, her trembling hand reaching across the white linen toward the woman beside Ruby. Forks froze midair. Ruby's father stared, mouth open. Her brother Mark dropped his phone. Her sister Lauren's face drained of color. Gloria, the woman who had stood by Ruby through every slammed door and whispered insult for the last 10 years, simply blinked, her hand still resting on Ruby's knee under the table. The room went so quiet Ruby could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway like a heartbeat counting down to explosion. Ruby felt the old wound rip open again, raw and bleeding. 10 years ago Evelyn had said the exact opposite words in this same house. "I have no daughter who chooses that lifestyle." Back then Ruby had been 20, fresh out of college, trembling as she held Gloria's hand on the front porch and told her mother the truth. Evelyn's answer had been ice. No tears, no yelling at first, just a cold, final sentence that sent Ruby packing a suitcase that night while her father looked away and Mark muttered something about disappointing the family name. Lauren had cried but still sided with Mom. Ruby had driven away with Gloria in the passenger seat. Both of them silent until they crossed the state line into their new life in Chicago. Now at 58, Evelyn's mind was unraveling thread by thread. Alzheimer's had stolen her sharp tongue first, then her memories, leaving behind a woman who smiled at strangers and forgot her own grandchildren's names. The family had gathered today because the doctors said she had maybe 6 good months left before the fog swallowed everything. Ruby had only come because her father begged on the phone last week, voice cracking. "She asks for you sometimes even if she doesn't know why." Gloria had offered to stay home, but Ruby refused. "We're a package deal," she'd said, squeezing Gloria's hand the way she had that first night on the porch. Evelyn's eyes, cloudy now, lit up with something like recognition as Gloria stood slowly and walked around the table. The older woman pulled Gloria into a hug that looked almost maternal, patting her back like she'd done when Ruby was small. "You've always been such a good daughter to me," Evelyn whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Ruby's stomach lurched. Good daughter. The phrase her mother had once reserved for Lauren, never for the girl who loved another girl. Mark cleared his throat, trying to laugh it off. "Mom's just confused, right? Alzheimer's plays tricks." But Lauren's eyes flicked to Ruby with that old accusation, the same look she'd worn the day Ruby left. Ruby sat frozen, heart hammering. Part of her wanted to snatch Gloria away, to protect the life they'd built from this sudden, cruel kindness. Another part, the part that still woke up at night wondering if she'd broken her mother, felt the first dangerous crack of hope. Gloria met Ruby's gaze over Evelyn's shoulder, her own eyes asking the silent question they'd danced around for years. "What do we do with this?" Ruby had no answer. The turkey grew cold while the family pretended nothing had happened, but the air had already changed. Evelyn kept Gloria's hand in hers the rest of the meal, calling her my girl every few minutes, and Ruby realized with a sick twist that the rejection she thought was permanent might be circling back in the worst possible way, through a disease that stripped away every reason her mother had once given for hating her. By the time dessert came, Ruby's chest felt tight enough to crack. She excused herself to the kitchen, Gloria following quietly. They stood by the sink, water running to cover their voices. "We don't have to stay," Gloria said, voice steady but eyes worried. Ruby shook her head. "Dad says she's been asking for my other daughter for weeks. I thought it was nonsense." Gloria touched Ruby's arm. "Maybe it's not nonsense anymore." Ruby closed her eyes. 10 years of building a life, 2 promotions, a condo, friends who never questioned their love, and one confused old woman had just threatened to undo it all with 3 simple words. She wondered how much more she was willing to lose before she finally walked away for good. The drive back to Chicago that night was silent except for the hum of tires on wet pavement. Ruby gripped the wheel until her knuckles whitened, replaying every second of the dinner. Gloria stared out the window, rain streaking the glass like tears neither of them wanted to cry. "She called me her daughter," Gloria finally said, voice soft. "Not daughter-in-law. Just daughter." Ruby swallowed the lump in her throat. "She used to say I wasn't even hers anymore." The memory hit fresh. Evelyn standing in the doorway that night 10 years ago, arms crossed, voice flat. Take your things and go. I won't watch you throw your life away on sin. Ruby had begged, explained that love wasn't a choice, that Gloria made her happier than anything the family had ever offered. Evelyn had simply turned and shut the door. No goodbye. No second chance. In the years that followed, Ruby had tried everything. Birthday cards returned unopened. Christmas calls that went to voicemail. When their father had his heart attack 3 years ago, Evelyn had allowed Ruby to visit the hospital but refused to speak to her directly, directing every word through Lauren. Gloria had sat in the waiting room the whole time, holding Ruby's coat, never complaining. That was the night Ruby first wondered if staying away was protecting Gloria or punishing herself. They had built something beautiful anyway. A small wedding in a courthouse with 2 friends as witnesses. A honeymoon in Maine where they watched the ocean and promised each other the family they chose would be enough. But enough had never quite filled the hole Evelyn left. Now the hole was cracking open again. Back in their condo, Ruby paced the living room while Gloria made tea. "Your dad texted," Gloria said, handing her the mug. "He wants us to come every weekend. Says Mom lights up when she hears your name." Ruby laughed bitterly. Lights up because her brain is broken. The real her hated me. Gloria set her own mug down. What if the broken version is the real one? What if the hate was the sickness all along? Ruby stopped pacing. The question lodged in her chest like a splinter. She had spent years convincing herself her mother's rejection was principled, rooted in faith and tradition. What if it had only been fear? What if the Alzheimer's was peeling back the fear and revealing something softer underneath? The next morning Ruby called her therapist, the same one she'd seen after the first year of estrangement when nightmares of her mother's voice kept her awake. "I don't know if I can let her back in," she confessed. The therapist's answer was gentle but firm. "You don't have to forgive to be kind, but you do have to decide what price you're willing to pay for closure." Ruby hung up and stared at the photo on the fridge, her and Gloria on their wedding day, smiling so wide it hurt to look at now. She had paid plenty already. Missed family vacations, holidays spent alone, the quiet ache when friends posted baby announcements, and Ruby realized her mother would never hold a grandchild from her. Gloria had paid too, quietly giving up the big church wedding she dreamed of as a girl because Ruby's family wouldn't come. By Friday Ruby's father called again. "She keeps asking for Gloria. Says she wants to show her the garden." Ruby closed her eyes. The garden had been Evelyn's pride, roses she tended like children. Ruby used to help her prune them every spring. "We'll come Saturday," she heard herself say before she could stop. Gloria didn't argue when Ruby told her. She simply packed an overnight bag and kissed Ruby's forehead. "Whatever happens, we face it together." On the drive back to Ohio, Ruby's hands shook on the wheel. She was driving toward the woman who had once thrown her out, hoping the disease had changed the locks on that old pain. She didn't know yet that the real test wasn't Evelyn's confusion. It was her own family's refusal to let the past stay buried. Saturday morning the house smelled of fresh coffee and Evelyn's lavender soap. Ruby's father greeted them at the door with a tired smile, pulling Ruby into a hug that lasted too long. "She's having a good day," he said. Inside, Evelyn sat at the kitchen table sorting old photographs, her fingers tracing faces she no longer named. When she saw Gloria, she lit up again. "There's my girl. Come help me find Ruby's baby pictures." Gloria glanced at Ruby, who nodded once. The 2 women sat together while Evelyn chattered about kindergarten plays and first bike rides, stories Ruby hadn't heard in a decade. It felt like stepping into a parallel life where she had never disappointed anyone. Lauren arrived an hour later, arms full of grocery bags, and the temperature in the room dropped. She kissed their father's cheek, ignored Ruby entirely, and gave Gloria the smallest nod possible. Mark showed up after lunch with his wife and 2 kids, the nephews Ruby barely knew. The boys ran straight to Evelyn, who hugged them and then pointed at Gloria. "This is your Aunt Gloria. She's family." The kids accepted it without question. Mark's wife looked uncomfortable. Mark himself pulled Ruby aside in the hallway. "Look, I'm glad you're here for Dad, but let's not pretend Mom's brain is giving us a do-over. She's sick. Don't use it to rewrite history." Ruby's jaw tightened. "I'm not rewriting anything. She's the one reaching out." Mark snorted. "She doesn't even know who she's reaching for." The afternoon stretched into a minefield of small moments. Evelyn insisted Gloria help plant tulip bulbs in the garden. The same plot where she and Ruby had once laughed over dirt-stained hands. Gloria knelt beside the old woman, gloves on, listening to stories about my Ruby, as if the last 10 years had never happened. Ruby watched from the porch, chest aching with something between gratitude and rage. Later, while the men watched football, Lauren cornered Ruby in the laundry room. You know this is temporary, right? When she has a bad day she'll forget you both. Don't get comfortable. Ruby felt the old betrayal rise. Lauren had been the one to tell their mother about the college girlfriend in the first place, framing it as concern. I'm not here for comfort, Ruby said quietly. I'm here because Dad asked. Lauren's eyes narrowed. And because you still want her approval even after she threw you away. The words landed like a slap. Ruby walked out without answering, but the question burned. Was she here for Evelyn or for the ghost of the mother who used to love her? That night Gloria and Ruby lay in the guest room that used to be Ruby's childhood bedroom. Gloria traced circles on Ruby's arm. She told me today she's proud of the life I built with her daughter. Ruby turned to face her. She never said that to me. Gloria kissed her forehead. Maybe she's saying it now the only way she can. Ruby wanted to believe it. But doubt kept her awake long after Gloria fell asleep. The family was fracturing again. Lauren's resentment, Mark's denial, their father's desperate hope. Ruby realized the real conflict wasn't Evelyn's disease. It was whether the rest of them could survive the truth the disease was forcing into the open. She closed her eyes and wondered how much more of herself she was willing to risk before the price became too high. The next 3 weekends blurred into a routine Ruby never planned. They drove to Ohio every Friday night, stayed through Sunday, and left with Evelyn's confused blessings ringing in their ears. My girls, she called them now, linking Ruby and Gloria's arms like they were teenagers heading to prom. The doctors warned the good days were numbered, but Evelyn's good days kept stretching, each one weaving Gloria deeper into the family story. Ruby's father started setting 2 extra plates at every meal. Even Mark's kids began calling Gloria Aunt Glo. But Lauren's silence grew louder. She stopped coming on Saturdays claiming work. Yet Ruby caught her texting their father long messages about boundaries and protecting Mom's dignity. One Sunday Evelyn had a moment of startling clarity. They were in the garden again when she suddenly stopped digging and looked at Ruby with eyes that seemed 20 years younger. I was wrong, she said plainly. About you. About love. Ruby's knees nearly buckled. Gloria froze beside her. Evelyn continued, voice steady. I thought I was protecting you from the world. Turns out I was the one who hurt you most. Tears spilled down Ruby's face before she could stop them. For the first time in 10 years she let her mother pull her into a hug that felt real. Gloria stood back, giving them space, but Ruby reached out and drew her in too. The 3 of them stood there among the roses. A strange new family born from a broken mind. The clarity lasted exactly 43 minutes. Then Evelyn blinked, frowned, and asked who the nice young couple was visiting today. The crash was worse than any rejection. Ruby drove home that night with Gloria's hand in hers, both of them quiet. She meant it, Gloria whispered. Ruby nodded, but the doubt had returned stronger. What if the apology was just another symptom? What if the real Evelyn, the one who had slammed the door, was still somewhere inside, waiting to wake up and reject them again? At work on Monday Ruby stared at her computer screen, unable to focus. Her boss noticed and asked if everything was okay. Ruby almost laughed. Okay. She had spent years making sure her career thrived so no one could ever say her choices ruined her life. Now the past was undoing that safety one confused hug at a time. Gloria suggested they take a break. One weekend off won't kill anyone. But Ruby's father called that same afternoon. She's asking for you both. Keep saying the garden needs my girls. Ruby looked at Gloria across the kitchen island and saw the exhaustion in her eyes. Gloria had canceled 2 client meetings already. She had listened to Ruby cry at 2 a.m. more times than either could count. Ruby realized she was asking Gloria to pay for a forgiveness that might not even be real. We'll go, she said anyway. The decision felt like another betrayal. This time of the woman she had chosen over everyone else. Gloria simply nodded. But Ruby saw the small tightening at the corner of her mouth. The price was climbing, and Ruby wasn't sure either of them could keep paying it. Thanksgiving arrived again, exactly 1 year after the first shocking dinner. This time the house was fuller. Cousins, neighbors, even Lauren's new boyfriend. Evelyn's decline had accelerated. She needed help walking now, and her words sometimes tangled. But she still lit up when Ruby and Gloria walked through the door. "My daughters are here," she announced to the room. Several relatives exchanged glances. Lauren's face went tight. Ruby braced herself. The meal began normally enough, but halfway through the turkey Evelyn dropped her fork and stared at Gloria with sudden intensity. "Gloria, tell them the truth," she said loudly. "Tell them I was wrong to send Ruby away." The table froze for the second time in 2 Thanksgivings. Gloria's hand found Ruby's under the table again, steady as always. Ruby opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Evelyn kept going, voice rising. "I told my baby she was broken. But look at her. Look at both of them. They're the strongest thing I ever made." Tears ran down Evelyn's cheeks. Ruby felt her own throat close. Lauren stood abruptly. "Mom, you're confused. Let's get you some water." Evelyn swatted her daughter's hand away. "I'm not confused. I'm sorry. I wasted 10 years. The room erupted into overlapping voices, some comforting Evelyn, others trying to change the subject, Mark muttering about medication. Ruby sat paralyzed, years of pain crashing over her in waves. Later, in the kitchen, Lauren cornered her again. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Using her illness to make us all feel guilty." Ruby finally snapped. "I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted a mother who loved me." Lauren's eyes filled with angry tears. "She did love you. She just didn't know how to love the version of you that came out that door." The words hung between them. For the first time Ruby saw the fear behind Lauren's resentment. The fear that if Ruby was forgiven, the family rules they had all lived by might crumble. Gloria appeared in the doorway, calm and quiet. "We're leaving," she said simply. Ruby followed without argument. In the car Gloria finally spoke the fear she had carried for months. "I can't keep watching you tear yourself apart for a woman who might forget this apology tomorrow." Ruby pulled over on the dark highway, chest heaving. "I know. But if I walk away now, I'll never know if she meant it." Gloria's voice cracked for the first time. "And if you stay, you'll lose me. I love you, but I won't be the reason you destroy yourself chasing ghosts." The ultimatum landed softly, but with the weight of every year they had fought together. Ruby stared at the road ahead, realizing the cruelest twist wasn't Evelyn's disease. It was that love, both the old one and the new one, now demanded she choose which parts of herself to save. Winter brought the hardest days. Evelyn's good moments grew rare, but when they came they were piercing. One February afternoon she looked at Ruby and Gloria holding hands by her bedside and whispered, "I'm proud of the family you chose." Then she slept for 14 hours. Ruby sat in the hospital chair long after visiting hours, Gloria's head on her shoulder. "She meant it every time," Gloria said quietly. Ruby nodded, but the doubt had become a constant companion. Their father had started talking about hospice. Lauren had stopped speaking to Ruby entirely after Thanksgiving. Mark texted occasional updates, but never mentioned the apologies. The family was splintering exactly as Ruby had feared. Yet she couldn't make herself stay away. In March Gloria gave Ruby an ultimatum wrapped in love. "I need you to choose us, the life we built without them, or I have to choose myself." Ruby cried that night for the first time in months. She thought of the condo in Chicago, the friends who had become their real family, the quiet nights where no one questioned their love. She thought of Evelyn's frail hand reaching for Gloria across the table. The next morning she drove to Ohio alone. Evelyn was having a bad day, staring blankly at the wall. Ruby sat beside her and spoke anyway. "I forgive you, Mom. Not because you're sick. Because I'm tired of carrying the hate." Evelyn didn't respond, but Ruby felt something shift inside her own chest. She left the room lighter, even if the woman in the bed might never remember the words. Back in Chicago that evening Ruby found Gloria packing a small bag. "I'm not leaving forever," Gloria said, eyes red. "I just need time to breathe." Ruby took the bag from her hands and set it down. "I choose us. Every day. I'll visit Mom when I can, but I won't let it break what we have. Gloria searched her face for a long moment, then pulled her into the kind of kiss that had started everything 10 years ago. Fierce, certain, unafraid. They stood in their kitchen, the city lights twinkling outside, and Ruby realized the real awakening wasn't Evelyn's. It was her own decision to stop letting the past dictate the price of her future. Evelyn passed quietly in April, surrounded by the family that had never fully reconciled. At the funeral, Ruby stood beside Gloria, hand in hand, while Lauren avoided their eyes. Ruby's father hugged them both and whispered, "She loved you both at the end." Ruby didn't correct him. Some truths only the heart keeps. As they drove away from the cemetery, Gloria asked softly, "Was it worth it?" Ruby looked at the woman beside her, the one who had never once asked her to choose differently, and smiled through fresh tears. Was the mother's final confusion a genuine redemption? Or did it simply prove that sometimes the kindest lies are the ones our minds tell when the truth has already done too much damage?